Hello and welcome to the Conversation with Ellyn Satter webinar sponsored by the Ellyn Satter Institute. I think that everyone on this call is familiar with Ellyn, so we're going to save some time and not give a lengthy bio, but we did want to take a moment to say a big thank you to Ellyn for donating her time and expertise today. And with that, Ellyn, I am turning over to you.
Oh, thank you, Cleo. Before I get started saying anything at all, can you hear my fan in the background? I forgot to turn that off.
I can't hear it. If other people can. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I'm going to just take my headset off and go turn it off.
Okay.
All right. Now, I feel like I've done everything I can to make this audible. Thank you, everybody, for coming, for showing up for this grand experiment. We're counting on you to help us get through it. Today we're going to be focusing, I would imagine, on the application of the feeding dynamics model in the division of responsibility and the eating competence model. And so I'll open up the questioning right now and invite you to raise your hand.
Okay, Donna Nolan, I see your hand raised, and I am going to unmute you so you can speak with the audience. Okay, Donna, I think you're ready to go.
Donna, would you tell us where you're from and what kind of setting you work in, please?
Uh-oh, Donna, I'm not hearing you. I am showing that your computer headset and microphone or whatever you have is active.
Do you need to turn up the volume?
Okay, Donna, does someone else have a question? And we will give Donna a couple of minutes to figure that out. Donna, I'm going to leave you unmuted for now. All right, Carrie, here we go. I'm going to unmute you.
Thank you. Hi, this is Carrie Bergnier. I am in the western suburbs of Chicago, and my practice setting primarily is in a pediatric primary care setting. So
Hi, Carrie.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good.
Thanks for the chance to ask a question. I just have one. And I think one of my, and of course I struggle in my own mind with going back to division of responsibility and all the good dynamic information. However, I personally struggle when I see kids with underlying anxiety issues, and really they're essentially self-soothing or looking for a different resource to soothe, and it comes into the hiding of foods and all those types of things. And so that's my most challenging patient currently. Is I have a fine time working with babies, infants, toddlers, picky eaters, but when it comes to the anxious school-age child, that's where I personally stumble a bit. So I would appreciate any advice you have on that.
Yeah, that's really an interesting question. Tell me, what sort of picture are you getting of the feeding dynamics behind these kids? I mean, do you feel like the parents are doing a good job with following the division of responsibility?
Well, I think it definitely varies patient to patient, because I do bump into this, fairly frequently with, the reason that they might be presenting to a dietitian might be because of their increasing weight velocity on the growth chart and that type of thing. So at that point I might get pulled in for things, and I'd say it really does vary as to how much the parents would or would not be applying those principles. Some, depending on how much interaction I've had with them in the past, some may be well on their way, and some may be a little less along the way, but the child still appears to be having a lot of internal struggles with trying to manage it all, and just has a lot of just anxiousness. And I can see it in their eyes, and I can see where the parents are just saying, I don't know how to help this child anymore. I feel like we're doing what we need to do, but, and again, maybe I've met with them before, and maybe this is the first time, but it just depends on the child.
Right. Well, let me try you out. Now, here's another experiment that we're going to be doing. I have just brought up the ESI website. You saw my smiling face before then. And I'm going to pull up this family meal, and I hope that this doesn't freeze us up. If it freezes up, Cleo has plan B that she can go to. But some of the things that I think about with the division of responsibility, interacting with child anxiety, particularly during the school age years, is, first of all, children are going to be less anxious if they have structure. But you don't want structure to be introducing food deficit, and I think that's really what you're worrying about, isn't it? That somehow or other in restricting the child in any way is going to heighten their anxiety. Okay, and so I think what we're really considering is that there are some glitches in applying the division of responsibility. And the way you're entering this whole thing is by observing the child's behavior. And these kids are not relaxed and comfortable around food, and they're not behaving in ways that make their parents comfortable. And so the thing you need to think about, your working hypothesis, is that somehow or other, either deliberately or inadvertently, this child's food intake is being restricted. And so sneaking and hiding food most often has to do with forbidden food. And that is, you know, that parents need to find ways of seeing to it that these high-fat, high-sugar, relatively low-nutrient foods that kids typically sneak and hide are included regularly in the family fare. And since my rule is that, you know, one dessert at mealtime, but it's all right to include chips and that sort of thing, the place that you're really going to end up including the high sugar forbidden foods is at snack time. And so having structured snack time is real important. And also, another thing I think about is feeding your school-age child here is to follow a division of responsibility. And here's an important one. Make the rules and let her manage her after-school snacks right after school and at the table. No munching along with homework or in front of the TV. And so, and that, you know, the rule with any sort of snacks is that you manage the timing. That is, you have the snack early enough, as early as you can before the next meal, and then you let the child eat as much as they're hungry for at snack time. And so those would be the strategies that I would consider that if all of these things are in place. I would think by way of trying to figure out where the child's anxiety around eating is coming from, I would go through this list of things and considering that all of these issues are in place. Does that help at all, Carrie?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, I think I've personally fallen back on these principles in the past. But as the kids grow in age and have more freedom and choice, whether it's at a friend's house or at school, obviously parents may or may not be seeing the growth chart results that they desire. So I think that's where it becomes a bit of a struggle back and forth, where I will talk to them that, you know, this is a longer term process, and that we're trying to, you know, eventually have them normalize the way that they're eating, the way they're seeing their feeding interactions and things, and this isn't going to be fixed next week or even the week after. So I think it does help. I think it's just an ongoing discussion.
Well, I agree with you. And, you know, you raised the issue of kids disinhibiting on the way home from school and at the friend's house if the friend has a snack drawer. I don't think there's much that you're going to, well, you can, of course, control for the disinhibition by seeing to it that these forbidden foods are readily available that we were just talking about wherever they are. And so the child isn't so preoccupied with the so-called forbidden foods. Now I can't find it, but and so then they're not going to be as vulnerable to them on the way home from school and at the friend's house, but they're still going to be vulnerable to being allowed to eat all the time. And I think that in that respect, you just are going to have a little talk with them and say, well, you know, this is why I follow structure. These are the reasons why structure is a good thing. And these are the reasons that I really don't like to have you eating all the time in between meals. And when you eat at other people's house, you're going to have the opportunity to experiment with other ways of eating, and so you're going to find out what works for you. And you just have to let it go at that, because you know you can't tie them up when they're away from home. So
doesn't work so well. Okay. No, thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Carrie.
Okay, this is Cleo here. And there may be, I'm going to warn you, there may be some pauses. I'm doing a lot of typing, so I'm trying to mute myself in between. But I'm also seeing people are mostly typing their questions in, so I'll read those. But if there's a brief pause, don't panic. It's just me trying to get unmuted and figure out where I am. Okay, Miss Donna Nolan, who works in a public health setting in Eastern Newfoundland, am I saying that right, Donna? I hope I am, with mainly rural communities. She has two questions. Her first question is, how does the Division of Responsibility address fluids such as milk and juice at meals and snacks?
Right, that would be Newfoundland, I believe, unless I miss my guess. Hi, Donna. Someday I'm going to get there. I got close this last spring, but not close enough. Milk and juice, and I think that parents ask this question, or health professionals ask this question, because you have a child who seemingly is more ready to drink than to eat, and so he comes to the table and drinks his meals. I always like to start out by having as few rules as possible, making sure that parents really are following the division of responsibility in feeding, making sure that parents are making the meals as accessible as they possibly can. And let's see, what do I like to use for that? I like to refer to being considerate without catering in planning family meals, and that's going way back to the early history of helping family get back to the table, making sure that these meals are really accessible and that parents are being considerate without catering with meal planning, pairing familiar with unfamiliar food, preferred with less preferred food, and so on. And so the point is that the milk or the juice isn't the only thing that the child can really manage at mealtime. But sometimes, even when parents are doing the very best that they possibly can with this whole meal management, you still have a pretty picky kid who is really slow to sneak up on new food and learn to like it. And in that case, I prefer to not restrict, not put limits on milk or on amounts of milk or juice. Make sure that milk or juice is presented at mealtime or snack time. I like to see milk only at lunch and dinner, having that be the mealtime beverage. Juice is okay for breakfast. Juice is okay for one of the snacks. But I would suggest that that's about all, because kids do tend to overjuice if given half a chance. And so what I'm saying is I would handle it with structure. I would make sure that the structure, that family meals and snacks are well in place, that parents really are good with this bit, with being considerate without catering, with meal planning, and that and then I would just keep my fingers crossed and trust the child to bring themselves along. You know, that children tire of even favorite foods and consume something else, and that applies to milk and juice as well. So how does that grab you? Does that give you an answer to your question, Donna?
And Donna, I got a little note from Donna. We're going to try her again. So Donna, I'm unmuting you now. I hear a phone. Is that you, Donna?
No, that's me. I have
Okay.
my privacy screen on.
Okay, I tell you what, Donna, I'm going to unmute this again just in case your system comes back on in the middle of a question, but I will read. Okay, I see your note. I'm going to read your question. The second part of her question was, she says also she's been asked this question: what do you do when a child wakes up around 4:30 or 5 a.m. and says that they're hungry?
Well, I think you can help me answer that question, Cleo. That was part of the transition that you made away from one of your kids' breastfeeding on demand and sort of making the transition to eating from the family table. I think the first thing I would do is to make very sure that the child was having a substantial snack at bedtime. Not a fancy snack, not saving the ice cream for bedtime, but having a good substantial snack that has protein, fat, and carbohydrate in it. And parents protest, oh, we don't, we've just gotten done with dinner and now do we have to give them a snack? We want to get them into bed. But yes, I would. I would definitely do that. And because for a couple of reasons. One is that kids often don't do a very good job with eating their dinners. Dinners tend to be more grown-up food. There's a lot going on. They're tired. They've been eating all day. And so they tend not to eat. There's more stimulation, both parents are home. And so if they don't eat well at dinner time, but then they can have another chance at bedtime snack, and then I think that is going to address that getting up at an odd hour in the morning, as well as anything else does. And as I started out saying, that many times kids who are just making the transition from breastfeeding will get up at odd hours during the night, and if they're misusing breastfeeding, if they're drinking, having breastfeedings rather than eating, many times they don't do as well with eating during the day. I don't know. Do you want to hold forth on that topic, Cleo?
A little bit, yes. And Ellyn helped me out with this with my daughter in particular. So I did start out giving her an early morning snack, and I still do. I have an early riser and a late riser, and my late riser really doesn't do well if he eats right away, so there can be a big gap between when my early riser eats and when we get our family breakfast on. And so for my daughter, she often does have a snack very soon after she wakes up, and it works best if I just plan for that and I don't wait for her to say I'm hungry. I just give her a little snack. I make it pretty boring so it doesn't make her want to get up, self-preservation, and also to help it not compete with breakfast. So it's usually crackers, peanut butter, and milk is her sort of standard. So that's how we handle that.
You don't give her Cheez-Its.
Right.
She loves Cheez-Its and will eat those without stopping. So does that address your question, Donna?
She put, quick thing, she did say you got the Newfoundland pronunciation correct and says she would love to have you come there. She says, would it be okay to feed them when they wake up, or does that set a new pattern of eating?
Yeah. Well, I think I think you must have been typing when Cleo gave you her good advice or set her good example with her, you're talking about the 4:30 in the morning waking up. I would I would really try, you know, parents need to sleep too, and I would really try with the bedtime snack at first and see if that can't extinguish that behavior. If you know, the parent doesn't mind getting up at 4:30 in the morning and having that be the start of the day and sitting down with the child while they have a little snack to tide them over for breakfast, that's fine. But I have to say I wouldn't be very happy with getting up and feeding a kid at 4:30 in the morning. So yeah, I would try to feed in a positive way. Probably wait not to try to extinguish that 4:30 a.m. Feeding right off the bat, and depending on the age of the child, I think that after a couple of days I'd say, well, you know, you're not eating as much as you usually do. Is this just habit? Do you think if you turn over and go back to sleep that we could wait to get up for a little while longer, and then I'll sit down with you and we can have something to eat? And it's surprising how young kids can be when you have that conversation. They understand way more than you think they do.
Donna says thank you. Thank you, Donna. That's lovely.
You're welcome.
I have a couple of other questions that are typed in, and I don't have any hands raised, so I'm going to read them. If you're game and you're willing, I would love for you to raise your hand. I think it's so nice to be able to hear your voice, and then also you don't have to worry about my badly pronouncing either your name or your location. So if you've got it, and great, Chris, I see your hand raised. I have a question from Andrea and a question from Julie, and then I will move to Chris. Okay, coming in from Andrea. Apparently Andrea was having a little hard time getting on, but she's here now, and she says, I'm just going to read these. I think that'll go best. I apply the SDOR with my own children, and it works well. However, I am an RD in health promotion with a focus on nutrition education with young children. I find that almost any nutrition education about nutrients, food groups, etc. conflicts with the SDOR as it, quote, tells them what to eat, end quote, and feels like pressure, instead of letting them choose based on interest, hunger, preference, etc. This is probably a common issue for RDs in public health. How do we address this? It is part of the curriculum in Ontario, Canada schools, and so is being taught, and we RDs are trying to help teachers do it with the least harm. Help.
Amen. I believe you emailed me about this. I'm going to show you, let's see, resources, guides and policies. Cleo, where did we put those chapters from secrets? What we do, guides and policies, position statements.
I think it's under resources. Probably you're looking for the parts from secrets.
Yeah.
I think they're under educational materials. I am going to try to break that out a little, but that's
all right. Here we go. Secrets. And Cleo is right. It's under educational materials, and it's under resources, educational materials. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. Resources.
What we
and
do.
Educational materials. Right. What we do. Resources, educational materials. Our problem is we have so much stuff on this site that it gets a little complicated finding it. This is a chapter from, this is an appendix from Secrets of Feeding a Healthy Family. And it's really quite comprehensive, and it talks about doing nutrition education in the schools in a developmentally appropriate way that does not conflict with the division of responsibility with feeding, in a way that supports children's intuitive capabilities with eating. And so, and it says very strongly, don't teach children adults' jobs. And in the very early grades, children can be given concrete experiences with food. They can help familiarize themselves with food. But they can't apply nutrition principles to food selection, because that requires oh, what kind of reasoning is it? It's a more sophisticated level of reasoning than children are really capable for. I'm having age or a word problem today, but it'll come to me when it's too late. And so it's only when kids get to the point where they're like 11 or 12 or 13 years old where they can think subjectively that they can begin to apply abstract thinking, where they can think abstractly that they can apply nutrition principles, and then you can begin to talk about the principles of menu planning, principles of nutritional adequacy of the diet, and applying that to what and how much you eat. And before then, there are lots of things that children can do to learn. You can do nutrition education with children without teaching them shoulds and oughts, like providing food exposure in all ways, explore novel food, putting the food in context. You know, there's a lot you can talk about their history, how food is raised, and then you can in the early grades, letting children touch, smell, prepare, taste, sort into basic food categories. You know, you can do all that without getting into the shoulds and oughts. And if you're going to be teaching prescriptions for how much a child should really eat, the prescription needs to be applied to parents' menu planning or school people in the school, their menu planning. Those principles have to apply to what goes on the table, not what goes into the child. And children shouldn't be told that they need to eat certain good food or not eat certain bad food because they simply can't manage it. If it frightens them, it confuses them, they really don't understand what that's all about. So this is, you know, there's a lot in here, and I think it'll keep you busy for a really long time. Now your question, whoa, all right, can you still see me? You still see what I'm talking about here? Okay, Cleo?
I can,
am I still in?
I can see, I'm sorry, I have so many windows open with questions and stuff. I see support respect for diversity in body size and shape.
All right. Okay, so I think I might be stuck. All right, I'm going to go to Secrets, Chapter 13, Choosing Food. Now, does that show, Cleo? I've got Chapter 13, Choosing Food up.
No, it's not showing on my screen. Let me quickly see. I'm not seeing it, so I was going to offer to put it up, but I'm not seeing it quickly on my screen.
All right, well, I'm going to tell you about it. If you go to Secrets Chapter 13.
Oh, Andrea says she sees it, so that's good.
Okay, it's Choosing Food. And it talks about nutrition, gives nutritional principles without getting caught in the rules. And essentially what it says here is, essentially, I spend this chapter blessing the food. Your task is to make practical use of this information without becoming wary about food. And so I think if you combine this Appendix H and Chapter 13, that you're going to be able to come up with something that is helpful to you. Are you there?
Yes, I was just hoping that you were pausing. We hadn't lost you. Good. Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to close this and close that.
Okay,
and I'm going to show you my beautiful mug again. No, I'm not. There you go.
Andrea says this is the direction that they steer teachers in already, and so she will be studying secrets for sure, and she says thank you. Thank you,
You're
Andrea.
welcome, Andrea.
And thank you to all of you who are sending me notes about what you can see and responding in that. That is very helpful. Okay, Julie, I'm going to read your question. I tried to send you an audio pin, but it's telling me I still can't unmute you. So I am going to read for Julie. This is, and I love Julie, but I call her Julie D, and you'll see why. Julie, I'm really trying my best. Julie Derswicki says, I'm just going to read what she has to say because it's so nice. She says, first a comment, the ESI faculty are the best pediatric dietitians in the country, if not the world, in her humble opinion. Well, thank you, Julie. It's so nice. She said, as I was perusing your website, she read that Inez Anchondo is doing research on the division of responsibility. Would you comment on current research on the DOR and on eating competence?
Yes, thank you very much for asking. Once again, I'm not sure if you're seeing my website or not, or if you're seeing my screen or not. I keep.
I am. Yeah, it looks. I think it's unfrozen.
Back?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So now we're on what we do. And Cleo, where did we put research? Programming? No.
I think it's under how we know. Is it under how we know?
Oh, of course. All right. ESI-related research project. Okay. Project that Inez Anchondo is working with. She's actually working with two things. One is cognitive testing of the SATR eating competence inventory for low-income pregnant women. We have not validated the ECSI for this particular population, and as you know, Julie, that Inez is in El Paso, Texas, so a lot of her population is Spanish-speaking. So she's kind of doing a twofer with this cognitive testing. And with cognitive testing, you read the items of the inventory, have people score themselves, and then they will say how they interpreted the particular item on the inventory. And if their interpretations then is consistent with the interpretation that we give for it, then we say, okay, then we have consistency. And if it's, if almost everybody who takes the inventory ends up saying that it's something quite different from what we think it is, then we have to go back to the drawing board. And so we've done a lot of this cognitive testing with ECSI. Well, I'm going to show you this. I think you'll find it interesting. So here is here are the questions on the ECSI. For instance, I am relaxed about eating. A pregnant woman might say, no, I worry about it all the time because I'm pregnant. I'm comfortable with eating enough. Well, I can't eat enough because my stomach is so big, and I don't have room for food anymore, and so on. So these are the kinds of things that we would be addressing. Now, it seems to me that pregnancy is one of those conditions that is going to a certain extent, impair eating competence, but in the long run, once we get this validated for pregnant women, then we hope to be able to demonstrate that pregnant women who have high eating competence have a better outcome in their pregnancy than women who have low eating competence. Pilot testing of SATR's Parents Addressing Child Overweight Treatment Protocol. This is a protocol that Inez Anchondo is trying with low-income people in El Paso with very good results. And if you've had the two trainings, if you've had the two vision trainings, the Feeding with Love and Good Sense and Treating the Dieting Casualty, you'd be eligible for pilot testing that with us. So that's a possibility for you too. And after pilot testing, we hope to be able to publish that and make it more widely available, but to people who know and understand the two models. Validation of the trust control inventory. This is another of my clinically generated tools that I've used for assessing distorted eating attitudes and behaviors. That applies to people who have stopped dieting but really are not very good at managing their eating and have negative body image and activity attitudes and behaviors. And so this has been rewritten and has passed the panel of experts and is just waiting for validation. So we have We have some exciting projects going. Thank you for asking. And I'm done talking, Cleo.
Thank you. I forgot I muted myself. So I don't want to say something I'm not supposed to say, Ellen, but can we say that there is there is a project going on in regards more direct to the division of responsibility too?
Oh yeah, thank you. And I don't know if we really, well, certainly they're ESI related research projects because I've been working my heart out on it. I've been working with Barbara Losey, who was my partner in testing the the SATR eating competence inventory that I just told you about. And she and I have been working for the longest time with defining the questions and cognitive testing of a feeding dynamics inventory. And we have now arrived at a 15-item feeding dynamics inventory, and we're just getting ready to do the validation of that feeding dynamics inventory, which is pretty involved because we're doing video, and we will be validating it, having parents fill out the questionnaire and then doing video and assessing whether the parents' answers on the questionnaire were an accurate representation of what they actually do in feeding their children. So Barbara and I are way out on a limb right now and hoping against hope that this questionnaire can be validated. But Barbara is an amazing researcher, and she knows how to run the data, and if it doesn't work, she'll figure out what we have to do to fix it. So, one isn't supposed to want it to work, but what can I say? I do.
Okay, so we have our break. We have Chris Murakami. Chris, I'm going to try unmuting you and letting you talk. And then I have a question from Thea Lynch. And then Barbara Hope, I think that's correct. We'll get to you then after that. Okay, Chris, are you there?
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for the opportunity to ask a question. I work at the Child Development Lab at the University of Missouri. And my role is kind of interesting. I do garden education coordination, but also help with some of the menu revisions that we're working on in our center. And a new trend is that some parents are kind of intervening and doing, at least recommending, for us to provide separate meals for children. There are maybe 5 children. And so it's the short order cooking idea. And I was just wondering if there was any advice for how to create kind of a policy or how to interface with parents and addressing those issues.
Yeah. Okay, Cleo, where did we put the child care feeding policy? Resources? Educational policy, maybe policies. If you can't find stuff on our website, it's because there's just way too much stuff there. Many years ago, I wrote this child care feeding policy. And you are welcome to appropriate it and use it. You see here, it can be reproduced for free distribution. And I don't think it actually applied, or it doesn't address specifically what you were talking about, Chris, but if you want to try to let me ask you, Chris, do you think this addresses your concern? Do you think this is a way of sort of getting hold of these parents? Okay, all right, I'm answering my own question.
I think it'll definitely be a useful tool for initiating the conversation, I guess. What I'm concerned with is kind of there's been talk around with our staff that they want a policy saying like that we don't have to do that, or that we don't necessarily have to make those accommodations for the children, and that the children in general should participate in the food service that we provide. And I just wonder if being hard-nosed is the right way to go, or if it's, providing us information and things like that to explain our position, I think is going to be important. But I just
right. Well, and the intent with this feeding policy is to introduce this policy during recruitment. And you have lots of other policies that you introduce parents to. We don't beat children. We don't, we don't do a lot of other things to children, and this is how we feed children, and this is how we take care of it. And we don't cater to specific likes and dislikes, but here's what we do instead. We do make sure that there's a variety of food so children can pick and choose, that our child care setting is intended to help children increase their eating competence. And so here's how we go about doing it. And so putting it in a positive context rather than a negative context might be useful. And
sure.
Here is something else, how to feed children. Two things and here's where you do some parent education, that pointing out to the parent that the goal of your feeding program is not to get children to eat certain amounts or certain types of food, but to raise a child with positive eating attitudes and behaviors so he can be competent in all these ways. And that if children have these positive eating attitudes and behaviors, that their pattern is that they will ever so gradually sneak up on new food and learn to like it. So I think this will work for you if you can manage to put it in the context of raising a child who is a good eater and bringing the child along to where he can learn to like a greater variety of food. How does that grab you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's going to be a challenge for us, but I think that's part of what we're interested in doing, and
right,
being very intentional about kind of our policies.
Right. How children learn to like new food is another one, and you talk to them about here's how we bring children along to help them learn to like new food. And so those are your two goals, to raise a healthy child who feels good about eating, and to position the child so he or she can bring himself along and learn to like new food. Now I want to tell you about Funny You Should Call, because let's see, if I can, whoop, don't want to close that. Barbara Losey, again, is the director of the, no, Cleo wouldn't like it if I left the webinar. Barbara Losey, and if she's at the Needs Center in at Penn State, and so if all goes well, this will come up. And she's working on a curriculum that's called Needs for Tots. And she is, in fact, looking for preschool settings to test her needs curriculum. And this is, I believe it's a 5, I helped her write it, but I can't, yeah, 5, a prologue, 5 classroom lessons, children's book tasting opportunities, parent-child take-home activities, parent help, and digital photo frame. It's really great. Barbara and her colleague Star Campbell wrote it, and I edited it. And I would, if I were you, I would contact her. If you just go to www.needcenter.org, contact her and tell her you'd like to test it. I think you're a match made in heaven. And this would bring your parents along just the way that that you're talking about. And here's one of her pages, and they're great. I mean, they're beautiful, and the information is just top notch. And so, yeah. In fact, when you write to her, tell her what your question was and the dilemma that you're having with the parents, because I think this is a perfect way to bring parents along in just the way that we're talking about. Don't you? Well, you don't know because you haven't seen them yet, but I think so.
I am putting my email address in the chat box, so Chris, if you would like to contact me more about this later, or if you have questions or you want to be able to reach me directly later, and I can also forward on to Ellyn, you can see that in the chat box at the bottom.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Good. All right, Chris, I am going to just mute you again.
Well, now just a minute before Chris goes away, have him tell us what he had to do in order to get himself my voice as a part of this conversation.
He's got his, oh, there you are.
What was the question?
What did you have to do to your computer in order to allow yourself to participate in this conversation by voice?
I just downloaded the plugin and I have my headset and audio thing on. I'm not sure if I did anything special.
And you clicked on mic and speakers, and you turned up the volume so you can hear. Is there anything else that? Yeah, I don't know, but it certainly is defeating. All right.
Okay.
Go ahead, Cleo.
Okay, so Thea Lynch, I hope I'm getting that right too. I don't have her setting, but she asks how you address divorced families if only one parent is willing to implement the DOR.
Yeah. Well, you do the best you can. You know, children are so wonderfully flexible. And they bring their behavior up or down to the type of behavior that is being expected of them in any given setting. So if the one parent is doing the division of responsibility and feeding and doing a good job with structured meals and sit-down snacks and doing all the stuff that we're talking about, the child is going to develop eating capability that matches that level of parents following the division of responsibility. And in the other setting, they're also going to be equally happy to to graze for food, and and won't do a good job of eating meals, and that you'll just see everything that it'll be your little laboratory. You can see everything that happens when the parents are not, or grandparents. Many times grandparents get into the act with feeding in this situation, and the child is just going to behave down to whatever's being expected of him. And so probably will be more picky in that other setting than in your setting, or might be, unfortunately, that child is going to be slower to learn to like new foods in your setting, but you just have to hang in there and stay the course and maintain a division of responsibility, and trust that over time your child will have greater capability than he would otherwise. And it could very well be that the child's negative eating behavior, the child's pickiness and, poor mealtime eating and so on, becomes extreme to the place that it becomes a nuisance for the other set of families. And when that happens, there might be an opening to sort of move in and say, well, I don't have any problems whatsoever, and are you interested in hearing how I manage feeding? So there might be an opening, but I definitely would not have a fight about it, because the child is the one who's going to end up paying the price for it. I'm done, Cleo.
Excellent. Okay. Thea, I hope that answers your question. Barbara Hope. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Thea says thank you. Barbara Hope writes and says, Barbara Hope is at the Eastgate Public Health, Washington State, and also she's in private practice. Noted. Can you please address the idea of sugar addiction and the treatment of completely avoiding sugar?
Oh, dear. King County. You are. Where did you say Barbara is?
She says it says Washington, just says Eastgate Public Health, Washington State.
Oh, yeah. Okay. King County is Seattle, isn't
She's
it?
in Bellevue, actually, it looks like. Thank you, Barbara.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Sugar addiction. Well, I don't think there's any such thing as sugar addiction. In fact, I really don't. I do not find the concept of food addiction to be useful at all. That ordinarily when we're talking about so-called addiction, we're talking about food restriction, and we're talking about the whole concept. Right now, help me find where it says about forbidden food, where I'm looking right at it. I know I did. Where does it say? Managing forbidden food. Family, oh, here it is, using forbidden food. You see, I get all excited when I'm out in public and I can't find anything. But anyway, the idea of defining some foods, like high sugar foods, as being forbidden foods is certain to heighten their attraction in everybody's eyes, whether it's children or grown-ups. And if people are not allowed to have those foods, they are going to become preoccupied with them and prone to overeat if they are given the opportunity. And and in contrast to food addiction, or in contrast to addiction, where the usual treatment is to avoid the substance, whatever it is, altogether and tolerate the withdrawal, the treatment for food addiction, quote, end quote, that's based on defining foods as being forbidden is to have these foods reliably and with increased frequency initially to help take away the stigma of this foods being forbidden. And like everything else, even high sugar, high fat foods, which are very appealing foods, will become unappealing after a while, and the child won't be as interested in them. For instance, one of the things I recommend in incorporating forbidden food, I say, okay, have your chips at lunchtime every now and again, have enough so it can go around, and even have some left over. But keep the desserts down to one serving only, no seconds. But because that dessert limitation sets up scarcity in the child's and everybody else's mind, you have to have another time when there can be enough dessert type food so the child can really eat as much as they want to. And the time to have that is at snack time. So the child can sit down with a plate of cookies, a big plate of cookies, and a glass of milk, and eat as many cookies as he or she wants. And at first they're going to eat like there's no tomorrow and eat lots and lots of cookies. But the newness wears off, and after a while, they'll eat a cookie or two and then go off and do something else. And so, again, the solution for preoccupation with sugar and sugar craving and sort of uncontrollable desire and pattern of eating sugary food is to gratify the pattern in a structured, positive, and reliable way rather than trying to extinguish it by avoiding sugary food altogether. End of answer, Cleo.
All right, well, it's actually 1:59, so we're at a really good time. I hope this is okay, Ellyn, I'd like to mention to you guys, if you haven't already seen Ellyn's Facebook page, which is under Ellyn Satter Institute on Facebook. Ellyn administers that. She gets great questions and great conversations. So if you have more questions, that's a great place to put it, to ask your question. And it's also a great place to weigh in with parents and other professionals who bring their questions there. Thank you. Barbara, by the way, Barb, when you said when you were expressing your skepticism about sugar addiction, Barbara weighed in with, she said, me either. You said you weren't sure about it. And she also says, thank you. And Julie sent us a nice blessing and a good luck with the upcoming research. So
that's great. And if we don't have you on our mailing list already, I would sure like it if you would write in and give us your snail mail address and your email address, because we really like to know who you are and to keep track of you as we sort of travel this path with feeding dynamics and eating competence. So let us, please keep in touch and let us know who you are.
Oh, great. We're getting several thank yous. And, oh, Barbara says she started working 20 years ago at WIC with Julie. So nice there. And thank you for your thank you, Carrie. And thank you all so much.
Bye now.
Bye.